And good morning, Bradley.
Morning, Bradley Shulman, Office of Legislative Counsel. Here to do a walkthrough of H868.
And actually, before you get started on that, I'm going to just have a quick show of hands from the committee um, to take 868. Let me get a motion actually to take the short farm bill off the wall and begin, working on it.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. It's been moved. We don't need a second. Any discussion on this? So I'm going to say all in favor, and everybody who's present can vote yes. Yeah. And people online, are you there?
I'm there and I approve.
Okay. Um, Representative Nelson? Not sure, maybe we lost him. Any opposed? He's opposed. All right. I think we have a 5-0 vote. So let's proceed. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so this bill, there are still, we'll go over the points. Sorry about that. We'll go over some points that still need to be hammered out before the bill is ready to be voted on. But this is an amendment to Short Form Bill 868, an act related to prohibiting the use of ultra-processed foods in school food programs. And it is creating a study committee. So the study committee is Healthy Foods in School Meals Study and Report. And there's the creation of the Healthy Foods in School Meals Task Force to study and report on the use of ultra-processed foods in school food programs with recommendations for whether, and if so, how to limit the use of such foods. The membership, this is the point that needs to be ironed out. So there is a to be determined piece here. But currently the membership is listed as one school food nutritionist, one representative of the Vermont Farm to School program, one member of the House of Representatives who shall be appointed by the Speaker of the House, one member of the Senate who shall be appointed by the Committee on Committees, and to be determined. Powers and duties. The task force shall study and report on the use of ultra-processed foods in school meal programs with recommendations for whether, and if so, how to limit the use of such foods. The task force's recommendations shall include the identification of specific foods to phase out, practices schools may adopt to utilize local produce, recommendations for how schools may cook from unprocessed materials, and how to minimize the use of ultra-processed foods in the Vermont school meal programs. The task force shall examine different food preparation practices among various schools in the state and identify the best practices schools currently use to reduce reliance on ultra-processed foods. Task force shall have administrative, technical, and legal assistance from the Agency of Education and the Agency of Agriculture. This bill is kind of a hybrid between the two programs. It might be administratively easier to choose one of these programs, one of these agencies to get technical assistance from instead of an either. It's up to the committee. And
Representative O'Brien?
Would legislative council be party to that too?
I imagine we could be.
Well, the way it's drafted, I don't think.
Not right now, but yeah.
Well, yeah. And I'm not sure whether that was intentional or not. It possibly was intentional because we've been asked to be very thoughtful about when we involve ledge council during the summer. It was getting out of control for study groups and task forces. So to the extent that a committee can meet without the assistance of the legislative council, it is encouraged.
I get it.
I'm not sure whether Michelle said that when she was drafting it or asking you to draft it.
No, but it's yeah, so it's a possibility, but so we'll take that.
And they both have counsel, both those agencies, so they could be.
So currently the report would be due on or before December 15th, 2026. The Healthy Foods in School Meals Task Force shall submit a written report to the House Committee on Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry and the Senate Committee on Agriculture with its findings, including a report on best practices school may adopt to reduce the use of ultra-processed foods in school meals and any recommendations for legislative action. The task force shall meet at least monthly between September and December 2026. The Secretary of Education or the Secretary's designee shall call the first meeting of the task force to occur on or before September 1st, 2026. Task force, and this section is about meetings. Task force shall select a chair. A majority constitutes a quorum, and the task force shall cease to exist on January 15th, 2027. It's a standard section about compensation for legislators and members who are not legislators, and the effective date is on passage.
Good, thank you, Bradley. Can we just go back to the top then, and let's go through it section by section and see whether there's anything we might want to. I know you've already indicated a couple of things we might want to either change or elaborate on. So starting with section 1, yeah, Representative O'Brien.
I just wondered, would this committee define ultra processed, or would that be the purview of the working group? Just sort of know what they're after.
So I think actually, I think we wanted to remove the term ultra processed and just have it be healthy.
Okay.
Which is probably no more precise than ultra processed, but have it not be limited to ultra processed. That was Representative Boslett had suggested that, and he could unmute and confirm if she wants to, but if she's not able to do that, I believe that was her thought.
But then it also, the mission, it seems, would be not trying to reduce unhealthy food, but increase healthy food. Is that where the bill's going then?
First created. Sorry, I want to see if I can bring this up.
Yeah,
Such foods, right? So
and I think that's exactly right. I mean, we would have to change. So initially, I thought we were just changing the title of the task force, but that's perfectly fine. Excuse me. But we would have to change some things.
You want to
because we don't want to limit the use of healthy food in schools. But we can kind of change the language to increase the healthy foods, or could report on the use of healthy foods and how to limit the use of unhealthy foods. We can address the language in that way.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's good to flag.
Can I say something when there's a chance?
Yes, please do. Representative Boslett.
Yeah, so sorry, I lost my service for a moment, but I'm back on. I understand you're talking about I don't know what's been going on. The section with changing the language with ultra processed foods. And basically what I mean, I think it's okay to include that phrase in there somewhere. But I think my impression from talking to the advocates is that they very much prefer this first step of establishing a task force to be gathering information about what is possible, what's going well, what can schools learn from each other, and then we can also talk about what do we want to phase out. But it's not just about what are we going to phase out and what's the timeline for that. So I would say as much as possible, emphasizing we're working to find ways to make healthy food for kids, and that might eventually include phasing out ultra-processed foods, but that's not going to be in the first part. That's not going to be in the first instance.
Okay.
Yes.
So Representative Boslett, so when we're looking at the creation, currently it says report on the use of ultra-processed foods in school food programs. Do we want to say report on the use of healthy foods in school food programs?
I would say, maybe, evaluate, school menus menus in school meal programs, and look at what we can do to minimize and potentially phase out ultra-processed foods while enhancing whole foods and from scratch cooking, or something to that effect. I mean, I think basically we just want to leave it open so that the task force can make the recommendations that come out of their meetings, not determine ahead of time what they're going to conclude. Because they don't want to feel like they have a mandate at the beginning. We want to figure out together what is possible to help make better meals for kids.
Okay, that's great. And if I one more, and one more question, Representative Bosland. Actually, no, I think I'm good. I think I'm good for right now. We can keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that deals with little a, creation, and then the membership. So we've got a school nutritionist listed, someone affiliated with the farm to school program, a House member, a Senate member. Representative Bosland, did you have other thoughts?
I think maybe we want to have some space for advocates who work in food security.
Okay. So we might name, I don't know whether we name Hunger Free Vermont or whether we can say something generic about somebody who works in food security.
Okay.
I think it could go either way. I mean, I think most likely it would end up being Hunger Free Vermont. It's also possible somebody from NOFA would want to join. So maybe two spots for advocates, 2 or 3 spots for advocates.
I don't think that we need to limit it to one school nutritionist either. It might be beneficial to have more than one voice there.
I agree. And also, a nutrition director might be a better title. I think generally the people that run the meal program at each school, I think, are called school nutrition directors.
Food service directors.
Yeah.
The difference, right, between those two titles?
Well, there might be, but I don't know what food service means. Nutrition, like Harley's title, I believe, is nutrition director, and he makes the menus and makes the plans for the school, and figures out the local options and all the does all those things. So the nutrition director is the one that has the big picture.
Okay. I'll just say we're not making final decisions here. We'll be taking testimony from these organizations and people that we've discussed next week. So I think we can anyway, but we've got some ideas there. Representative O'Brien.
What are the heads of the school food authority called?
That's
That's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was wondering about, I know they're providing support, but should there actually be a designee from ag and AOE?
I'm thinking when we get down to the providing support part that we could pull ag out of that and just have it be somebody from AOE, that this doesn't need to involve both, and education seems like it would be the better choice. I don't know if that's right or not. And either way, we had originally both of those. We had somebody from each of those agencies, and partly it's a question of, they have limited resources and we don't want to put more work on them as necessary. But I think it does make sense if we're going to have somebody very technical support that they be participating too. So we're going to invite them in to testify. And
They don't cost money either, right? Because they already work for the state.
Yeah,
In general, right?
yeah. It's just taking the time away from all their other tasks.
Right.
So why don't we add to this list of representative from the Agency of Education? Yes, Representative Bartholomew.
I can probably be talked out of it, but it seems like we need more representation from actually in the schools. Maybe an administrator or someone who would be able to provide a reality check to a vision that,
So if we had,
sure who that would be.
so somebody beyond a food service
But having
person,
just one or two people who were associated with the school and they're all, the only thing they focus on is food and diet, I had a very different perspective from an administrator
yeah,
in the schools and not a OE.
yeah.
Someone who deals with budgets.
Right,
So,
okay, sounds great, but you know what it's gonna cost?
yeah, I'm coming at this without a lot of understanding of how it works, but if there is somebody in each school food authority who is the director, the food service director, that person presumably has budgetary responsibilities. And then there might be a nutritionist also who is focused more on, the quality of ingredients. So having both of those represented would make sense. And I would say, yeah, having two of each of them. We don't want this to get too large and unwieldy, but I think I would say tentatively, let's go with that.
I guess
Go to,
Two each, food service director and nutrition.
I think there was someone, if the food service director is gonna understand the food budget, but they're not gonna see the whole picture for the entire education budget for their district or their. So someone with broader school administrative duties,
Okay.
but I could be talked out of it, like I said.
Nora, do you want to jump in?
Thank you. And all aboard, Executive Director, Cumberland Vermont. So, just a couple points on this. I think you're correct. So one of the challenges for school nutrition programs is that the reimbursement rates are insufficient that the federal government provides. So many school districts allocate general fund money to their school food authority. So I do think someone who represents the business office, for the entire district and not only the budget for the school food authority, that would be wise to have someone or a couple folks with that kind of experience. And also it's unusual for school food authorities to have nutritionists necessarily. A school nutrition director is kind of responsible for both of the pieces that you were talking about, Chair Durfee, of managing the school food authority budget and also being accountable for the menus at the end of the day. So there wouldn't necessarily be someone who is a nutritionist in a school food authority. That really varies very widely. So just some additional information for you.
That's helpful. Thank you. Representative Brigham.
You probably want a business manager from the supervisory union aspect of it, probably.
Sounds like that would be helpful. Yeah. Yeah. So as a school business manager.
it's one.
I think,
Well, if you get a supervisory union, you'd have 5 schools or.
yeah, why don't we put it at one for the moment? And before we actually sit down again as a committee, we can get a little more information and check in with you, Bradley.
Okay.
But having that position represented, I think sounds like. Representative O'Brien.
What's the?
I'd like to speak again when there's a chance.
But school nutrition program director, nutrition director is, I think, what's most standard these days.
Should that
But they're
replace
called
nutritionist then?
Yeah, so it sounds like the food, there is no food nutritionist typically, but maybe Representative Bosland wanted to jump in. Did you have a?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say I didn't have the language pulled up when I was speaking before. I just could hear you talking, and now I have the screen. What I was talking about before with the nutrition director, like with Harley, his job is to plan the menus and make sure they fit within the budget. And I mean, his role is, that's the level that we really need the most represented on the committee. I don't think a school business manager who's just looking at budgets isn't going to have a lot of details about how to make healthy, good meals and what are good strategies and how can you get good things from farmers. I mean, the kind of input that we need is going to be more of a ground level, people working with food and policy. So I think that number on school food nutrition, change that to nutrition directors and maybe put 2 or 3 of them would be my thought.
Okay, good. So we'll certainly emphasize that position and then also hold a seat for somebody who can be like also saying, here's the global picture of the budget. Representative Nelson, were you trying to also speak?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Michelle is really wrapped herself into this and I think has a really good grasp of who needs to be on there. I would like to take this language though and forward it on to the principal of the school that I represent on the school board. Just have them look at it, and just to give them a one-off so they don't think that we're trying to. And if any of you other folks have schools that you could have them just take a look at it. But I think Michelle's right on to it and have a study group and figure out the feasibility of it all and how they can do it and move forward, being frugal with taxpayer dollars. But I applaud everything that's in it so far. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you can feel free, any or all of us to work on that over the course of the next week or two. Representative Bartholomew.
It might be obvious, but I think when we talk about a school nutrition director, that we make sure we use lowercase so that we don't rule people out because their title doesn't perfectly match.
Yeah, good point.
Good point. Yeah, thank you.
All right, why don't we need to run into lunch hour, Gary? So let's go on to page 2, powers and duties. We'll revisit the ultra processed food there. Representative O'Brien.
I was just gonna, Bradley, this looks like the kind of thing you need to rework, match that initial healthy food.
Yeah, I think that's right. If we want to take the focus off of ultra processed foods, which I'm happy to do.
Yeah. That's the first sentence, definitely. And then the second sentence, the recommendation shall include identification of specific foods to phase out, practices schools may adopt to utilize local produce, recommendations for how schools may cook, how to minimize the use of. Now, so that shall include, it doesn't say that you can't include other things. Do we need to say?
We'd say may. We could say
Shall include is good.
Okay.
Unless somebody has an issue with any one of those things. But then to make it clear that there may be things we haven't thought of that they would like to include. They're not precluded from adding anything else. So maybe we don't need to do anything to make that the case here.
I'll make a note, but I've got the idea.
All right, administrative assistants, D, I think again, I think the agency education there.
Someone needs to mute.
Michelle, Representative Bosland, did you want to say something?
I don't know how much administrative support we're gonna need, honestly. I mean, I feel like it's pretty likely I'll be the representative from the legislature, and I'm happy to convene the meeting. So, I mean, if we need somebody more neutral, then maybe we can have somebody come in from one of the agencies. But I don't know that we necessarily need this on an ongoing basis. Although, if there is a legal question, it would be useful to be able to ask. But I mean, I think as a legislator, I could ask questions about policy anyway, outside of the meeting.
Yeah, I think that this would be helpful, for example, if you're not all meeting in person, in any case, you would need to have the meeting zoomed and broadcast, so I believe. So rather than have you or whoever ends up chair, be helpful to have that support.
If that's something that one of the agencies could do for us to set up the Zoom and facilitate the meeting, I'm fine with that. I hadn't envisioned that part, but that's totally fine if that's a usual part of a task force. I haven't ever set one of these up before.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you want to have maybe somebody taking notes. So I think we don't want to ask the chair or anybody in the task force to be doing anything other than focusing on, getting the report ready. Taking testimony and then working towards the goal. So then the report itself is due on the 15th. It's coming to our committees. I think you could also go to the education committees.
Yeah, okay.
And for meetings, Bradley, since the first meeting has to be by September 1, I think maybe we should say August and December.
Yeah, I think the hope had been that we could have 5 or 6 meetings, so I would think we might actually start sooner than that even. So, but if the language is to occur by, that would be fine, because that gives us flexibility to start sooner if it's signed and ready sooner than that.
Yeah, it's just, I think that is the best practice not to have it start too early, just in order to get everybody there. But if the last couple of weeks of August should be realistic.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so compensation, I think this is pretty standard. We've noted that this bill will have to go to appropriations as a result of the compensation. I will give the Appropriations Committee a heads up so they know that. Good. Anything else?
Last number 2 here, these payments shall be made from monies appropriated from Agency of Education and the Agency of Agriculture. Maybe strike the Agency of Agriculture, since I think we're just focusing on the Agency of Education here. Or what can we do there?
Is that sentence necessary, strictly speaking?
Usually, yes,
Okay.
where the monies come from.
Yeah. Boy, okay.
I don't know if it necessarily has to come from one of the agencies, or it can come from the general fund.
Let's flag that.
Okay, we'll flag it.
I
Sounds good.
think that we may not want to be like having it come right yeah.
Okay.
But we'll have to figure out how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Where do study committees come from? I know speakers has some.
So,
Yeah.
can I ask
Yeah.
a question?
Yes,
Can I
Representative
ask
Boslin.
Bradley a question? It's important to know if we're doing the meetings by Zoom, there won't be a mileage expense. Is there still a per diem compensation just for time then?
I think there is. Yeah, I think there is, and I think that we're either strongly encouraged or required to include that typically.
it's at least strongly encouraged. I read the statute, and for legislators at least, it's first committee meetings and subcommittee meetings is the requirement. But for legislatures anyway, there's a fund in the General Assembly to pay for time and per diem expenses for study committees and things of that sort. I'm less familiar with how the funding would work from like the Agency of Education or something for the people who are not legislators. But we can flag that to see. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you could find out what the expenses are for that, because I think it's going to be pretty modest. I mean, I know I've been on committees in other places in the past, and the mileage reimbursement can be quite substantial, especially if you add it up for this many meetings. But if we're doing it on Zoom, I think the cost is going to be pretty modest. It would be useful to know what would a ballpark be that we're asking the general fund from to fund those per diems if there are expenses for individuals to participate.
Representative Bartholomew.
I think the answer to that, though, is that if you're in the legislature, you get paid for the day, for your legislative pay, and then if it was in person, you get paid mileage, and if it actual costs for meals. But if it's all by Zoom, then you wouldn't have those two. But I think you'd probably still get paid per diem for the day.
I believe so, yeah.
Legislative pay is the way it's worked for.
So I think we're pretty much bound by whatever the rules are or the statutes are. It's just a question of figuring out what the rules are, and particularly with where the money comes from for paying the other task force members. All right, can we leave it there? All right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll reconvene at 1 this afternoon after lunch.
We change it afternoon.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.